right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing?
Great.
Awesome. I'm Darren Prine, the co-founder for Cloud Tech Gurus. So glad to have everyone here today. I think you're going to be thrilled with the learning opportunities that you're going to get today with Jeff Bean here, my favorite CX author. I met him at a similar workshop a decade ago in Southern California, and have been wanting to put together workshops like this with Jeff ever since. His latest book, Next Generation Customer Experience, some of the things he's teaching in there, you've never learned at any other conference or workshop, and you probably wouldn't have learned it anywhere else if you weren't here today. So congratulations, you're in for some treats and to learn some things that are going to make a big impact on your contact centers and your future customer experience. So let's go ahead and kick things off. Real quick, I'll just give you a quick spiel on Cloud Tech Gurus. If you wonder who are they, do they just put on events? We are what's called a CX Innovation Alliance. We provide a smarter way to help companies source contact center solutions where at no cost to our clients, we assign an expert consultant like Gina right back there or Shelly over there, and they actually take on 70% of our clients' sourcing workload for them at no cost again to the client. They're going to document the requirements. They're going to work with us to screen all the vendors in the market and see who are the best match. They're then going to present usually a comparative analysis. Or if a client wants them to run an RFP, they'll even write up the RFP and run it. Ultimately, though, they get the client to the point where they have everything they need to decide who they want to look at, get demos from. They'll host and facilitate all that. And so the vendor salespeople are not allowed to reach out to them to try to close them and hound them. All the vendors work directly through our guru. That's what we call our experts. And so, for our end clients, there's no multiple discovery meetings, there's no salespeople, there's no sales pressure, and our experts are going to bring vendors to the table that you just wouldn't have found without us. Of course, we also have the Magic Quadrant vendors, but there's a lot of other hidden gems out there that it took us 3,000 hours of evaluating vendors to find. So you get to benefit from that. So that's Cloud Tech Gurus. And here is the agenda for today. So you can have a look at that, 8:30 to 9. We already had that happen, coffee, treats. Welcome. I'm going to introduce the sponsors momentarily. For a 2-minute commercial, keep it to 2 minutes or under, because at the solution challenge at the end, you'll have plenty of time to make sure everyone understands what you do, and we don't want to take time away from Jeff's workshop. So we're going to go through the workshop, as you can see up there at 10:45. We'll have a break. We're going to have lunch at 12 p.m. At lunch, 15 minutes into lunch, if you've finished eating, Jeff will be up here to sign books. So you can come up and everyone gets a copy of the book, so you can get a signed copy of the book. Then again, we're going to wrap up at 1:15. At that point, again, is another opportunity for book signing. Also, during breaks, we brought 2 photographers and a videographer, or is it the other way around? Anyhow, if you want headshots done, right outside here is a nice little area where they can take headshots that you can then use on your LinkedIn profile or for whatever you want business-wise. So that's just another perk that we have for you here today. And then we're going to play the game that we outlined called the Solutioning Challenge. Our sponsors have brought really exciting prizes, generally some of them worth up to $500. And we had them pick prizes that people would really want to win, like standalone pizza ovens and things like that. So in any case, everyone will move from round table to round table. We'll make sure everyone moves every 12, 15 minutes, whatever. And you basically want to learn everything you can about that sponsor, because you're going to write a use case for how your company can use and benefit from that sponsor, and they select who wins the prize based on your use case. So, be clever, be creative, learn what you can, hammer them with questions. They love that. And so that's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll give away the prizes at the end. There'll be extra time for the prize giveaways, more book signing, and then everyone will be skedaddling between 2:30 and 3. So that's the agenda. And housekeeping, phones on silent, please. You can take photos, but no video. We have videographers here, and we'll be able to share some of that with folks later on that they can use, benefit from, rewatch. Restrooms are on the other side of this wall. You walk out of this room, just walk over to pretty much the first hall you come to, and that's the restrooms. And post-event, after the event, Gina is going to be emailing everybody with links to 3 spreadsheets that Jeff put together. You can't really print these spreadsheets. No. It would be a big mess. So we're going to send everyone links so that they can have those and use them. He'll walk through what they are and why you're going to want to hold on to them and use them in the future. So you'll be getting emails from us for that. Now, quick drink. Our sponsors. First up, I want to introduce SoundHound. SoundHound AI is voice-enabled AI solution for automation and more. Let me go to their slide here. So SoundHound's independent voice AI platform connects people to brands through customized conversational experiences that voice-enabled products, services, and apps, while giving companies access to their valuable data and analytics for greater control and brand ownership of the customer experience. There's some things when you take a look at SoundHound that you won't see anywhere else. It's a very unique platform, really capable, and can make a big impact on clients. So with that said, come on up and let's talk a little bit more about SoundHound for 2 minutes. Here we are. Come on up, Dave. Here we are.
Thanks, Darren. Well, thank you for having me. My name's Scott Black. As Darren mentioned, I'm with SoundHound AI. For those of you not familiar with the company, and I'll be brief, SoundHound is a publicly traded company and leader in voice AI technology. And how the company really got started was a bunch of PhD students in Palo Alto, Stanford students, created an app which is called SoundHound. And if you're familiar with Shazam, it's very similar in nature to Shazam. They advanced that technology and really built speech recognition apps. And how those are leveraged today, if you've ever driven down the road and you're talking to your car in a Siri-like way, that app is typically a SoundHound app. Also, if you've worked with, driven in a drive-through and you're ordering from a kiosk in a QSR type of experience, not even talking to someone in the store, ordering your drive-through food items, whether it may be McDonald's or otherwise, that speech recognition technology is SoundHound as well. So SoundHound bought a company, which is the business unit that I'm part of, which is called Amelia. And Amelia front ends many contact center or unified communication systems today. So if you're calling into a contact center and you're talking to a voice bot or a chat bot, Amelia is a leading technology in that space, recognized by Gartner, Forrester, all of the leading analysts. So would love to work with you and learn more about your companies and how you're leveraging contact center and AI technologies. So I'll be in the back of the room later today. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And they have some really amazing vertical-specific AI built out, so definitely encourage anyone to learn more about SoundHound. And if you want us to get you in touch with Scott, we can. Next. There we go. 5-star call centers, who used to be my very favorite quality BPO for domestic customer care, but now they've branched out and grown. They're also nearshore, just an amazing company. Customers don't leave 5-star call centers because they're treated so well and their customers are treated so well. And so Joel, come on up. Fill in the gaps.
Good morning, everybody. Who here came from farther than South Dakota to be here? Okay, so I think I get that order. So I'm from South Dakota. Like Darren said, Joel Sylvester. I've been in the contact center space for 30-ish years. We'll just leave it at that. So I ran call centers for Wells Fargo for many years. And now we're a business process outsourcer. So we provide contact center services for those folks that need either staff augmentation or don't want to do it. We do everything from just providing staffing all the way up to full BPO services where people don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm really kind of, our group is kind of the ultimate end user. We work on 6 different AI platforms. Amelia, we have some things that we do on Amelia right now today. We work on 5 different UCAS providers, 4 different CCAS providers, 2 CPAS providers, and a partridge in a pear tree. So as you guys are out there and as we're talking later today, if nothing else, we've probably broken a lot of the technology, so we'll tell you what not to do, and probably have some case studies very specific to what you might be looking at. So we have a lot of partners in healthcare, financial services, retail, hospitality, and technical support. So looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you, Joel. All right, Nextiva. Nextiva, you don't generally associate the word disruptive with CCAS, but if anyone has a platform that is semi-disruptive as far as a CCAS provider, it's Nextiva. They've blended not only everything you would expect from a CCAS provider, all of the AI analytics, all of the other AI for everything else that you can think of or would want AI for. They blended in reputation management. So you can actually see, what's your brand reputation out there, and what's the brand reputation of your competitors, and social and really advanced social engagement through Nextiva. And they also have business communications. They have one of the best UCAS platforms out there. And there's times where there's companies that need both UCAS and CCAS that need them all integrated. They need what's called presence, so you can see, call center or if someone in accounting, if you want to pull them in, you can see if they're available or not before you do. And there's other benefits to presence. So, with that said, Nextiva, come on up. Let's learn more about you. Billy.
Hey everybody, Bill Fisher. I'm over at Nextiva now. Was with another competitor for about 11 years. Was very successful there, and I did kind of find out what was lacking. I'm sure you guys have done this before. You call into a call center, or maybe you chatted, in the call center, or send an SMS. And every time you call in or you chat, you're having to relay the same information that you did before. That's something that Nextiva does extremely well. Whether they're calling from the regular phone system, from the contact center, from any channel, is an easy way to see kind of a record, kind of like a mini CRM tool of what interaction has happened. I've found that at Nextiva, there's more in one place than really anywhere else. So a lot of people will do, the regular phone system side of the house really well. They do the call center side of the house really well. But then every time you take a call in the call center, transfer to maybe a ring group over in a sales group, what happened to that call? What happened to the call recording? It's really tough to figure out, what really happened at the end of the day, which makes it tough for a supervisor, makes it tough for quality assurance. The brand management's really awesome as well. Imagine being able to, in one place, have like your Yelp reviews, your Google reviews, your Facebook Messenger, your Twitter account, and you would think that this tool that we have, companies or to have something like that. I assume that, but I talked to a little company called Crocs Shoes, and I showed them that, and they were just super impressed. Like, I have 3 people in marketing checking like 15 different things a day constantly, and this is now just doing everything in one spot. So very exciting things in Nextiva. I'm excited to talk more about it with you guys, and happy to meet you.
Thanks, Bill. All right, Collaboration Room. Completely disruptive solution. I'm confident that you will not have seen anything like this before. And when it comes to coaching and collaborating with remote agents, I think this is a no-brainer. So come on up. I hope everyone enjoys Collaboration Room as much as I do. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Darren. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Hyland. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer with Collaboration Room. And what we do is we help contact centers who are focused on CX overcome some lingering issues that we've had since the pandemic. During the pandemic, remote was very difficult. It was hard for everybody, especially in the contact center world, because mainly we were trying to cobble together tools that weren't built for managing people in dispersed environments. Even Teams and Zoom are meeting platforms. They're not there to mirror the floor. And what most people had to do is a couple things. They either had to bring all their agents back and trade engagement, productivity, and security and compliance problems for now recruitment and retention issues, or they left everybody out and they're doing the best they can with the tools they have. But what if you had a tool that was born of the pandemic and built specifically to manage agents in any environment? Well, it exists. It's called Collaboration Room. It's a virtual floor platform. And what we do is we allow your frontline leadership to engage with, manage, train, support, coach the agents anywhere in the world, just like they were all still sitting together on a floor. Then we sprinkle in a few security and compliance things. You know, you had rules on the floor that aren't like not important because people are in another environment, but we sprinkle those in there to make sure that wherever that agent is, that environment is conducive to your security and compliance policies. Now, we're best known for remote and hybrid, but really we've got clients using our platform on the floor, remote, hybrid, multiple offices, and even to manage their third-party BPOs. Imagine being able to walk onto a virtual floor and see all the agents from your BPOs that are working on your project and be able to audit them and help train and support them so they better represent your brand. So it's called Collaboration Room, and it's literally the single floor or a single tool for every single environment. So thank you, Darren.
Thank you. Gotta see it to believe it. All right, so I'm going to introduce my friend Jeff Bean. Jeff Bean guides companies in improving marketing and customer experience effectiveness, increasing customer advocacy and profitability. He is the author of 3 acclaimed business leadership books about customer experience. The latest is Next Generation Customer Experience, how companies like ServiceNow, Netflix, and Intuit are creating next generation CX now. He is internationally recognized for his practical and innovative work, and as the former adjunct professor of advanced marketing and customer experience leadership at the University of California, San Diego, teaching international, domestic, and executive students. Please welcome Jeffrey Bean.
Thank you. Thanks. Wow.
Oh.
Okay. Darren, do you have the clicker right there? Great, thanks.
There we go.
All right, I think we're good.
Pull out my flash drive in one case. We leave it in there, actually.
Okay.
Not a very good one.
Whew. All right, no feedback. That was a bad experience we just had. Wow. Yeah, I did. Wow. All right. Well, anyway, thank you to our sponsors and to our host, and thank you for attending here. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you some very interesting findings and real practical and innovative information about next generation. Feedback up here? All right, so, okay, you'll let me know if it hurts. But anyway, we're only together for a little while this morning, so I'll get right into it here. So a couple of years ago, I was visiting the Smithsonian exhibit about companies that were incredibly innovative. And this was a kind of an aggregate view of the companies that really created our future. And for many of us, the present we were born into. And one of the things that was concluded by the Smithsonian people when they looked across at all of the inventions and impacts and things that were actually adopted by people forever was that the future is not fact, it's a decision you make. And certainly you can't control everything, but for instance, you know, we're here in this room now, we can make some decisions to make us more relevant and valuable to customers now and in the future. And so I thought that that was really a good summation of what the aggregate view was of a lot of companies that created our future in the last few hundred years. And now we're at a point where we're going to be doing it for the next couple of hundred years. So what I'm hoping you get from this workshop is a really good understanding of Generation Z and how they're different than millennials, and quite frankly, how they're different than all generations compared. Any two other generations compared are going to be a little different, but Gen Z compared to any one of those generations prior, the gap is enormous, okay? And that's both interesting and challenging. So then I'd like you to get familiar with some of the processes, and these are really proven processes and a few tools to help develop your strategies and interactions. And these apply to developing customer experience at the strategic level, at the tactical level, and the all-important interaction level. Interaction, I will say that word a lot this morning because that's really important. Then lastly, I hope as the morning progresses you get ideas about how to blend AI, self-service, and really the human part, the human interactions, because the best technologies that are adapted by people are actually fitted to them. And when you look at companies like, let's say, Apple or ServiceNow or Intuit or Netflix, they've all taken the time to actually create not just an interface, but a great experience for customers and then the user experience within that customer experience. And I like to say that a user experience will let the user know, and then the customer, which might not be the same, right? Customers and users might not be the same, but they'll let them know that any promise you made came true or not. So,
Real quick.
Sure.
The workbook's on your tables. We're on page 4 right now, so you can follow along as he goes. In your workbook, you can write down notes. There's even areas for notes.
yeah. And just to let you know where this came from, so this was, this didn't come out of thin air. What happened was I was looking at my young nieces and nephews who were Gen Zs, and then I was also working with clients who were Gen Z, and then I started to look at companies who really understood Gen Z better and who was delivering great customer experience to Gen Zs already. So I wanted a better understanding of this generation. And so I used a lot of resources and interviewed a lot of people of Gen Z, and really decided, okay, it's time for the next book. And what the next book is about, this book, Next Generation Customer Experiences, it's what are the key characteristics of the next generation of people that are coming that are really important customers and users, but also what are the group of customers, or who are the group of customers that would point to certain companies that are already giving them a great customer experience, particularly for Gen Z. So it's really two things, about Gen Z, and then it's about the companies and the processes that they're using to give Gen Z the customer experience they want, again, to create the advocacy. So this is kind of where this stuff came from. I'll share my ideas, but if you have some ideas that you'd like to share with us in this room as we go, feel free. Hopefully you'll get some ideas as we go. I call it kind of riffing, you know, and improv, if you will. Ask some questions along the way. If you have some great questions and they're too big for our time, we'll put them in a parking lot and we'll chat about them later, or we can make another time, because you never know what's going to happen as you go, you know. And then tools. You'll have the Next Generation Customer Experience book. Two of the chapters, there's 7 chapters, 2 of the 7 chapters are process chapters, and I'll show you what that means as we go. But they really tell you, well, how do you create effective customer experience intelligence like the companies that are already doing it and being successful with next generation customers, but also how do you create strategies, CX strategies and interactions for customer interconnection. It's different than just reaching customers. It's how do you interconnect with a customer or a user, okay? And so you've got a workbook right in front of you, and you'll see that that workbook has pages in it that look like this. And what I'm hoping is that you'll make some notes along the way. We'll be talking about a lot of best practices and things that we know already work. this is based on the success of customer experience leaders. So with that, I'm hoping that you'll sort of accumulate in your notes as we go best practices that give you ideas of things that you could do when you get back to your office, things that you need to undertake, and so accumulate those best practices as we go, and then there's some prompting questions that I put in there. How I might be asking you, well, how are you doing this already, or how are you doing that? So you'll see those in those pages. And then you will get a link after the workshop to get the template tools. And these tools were not made for this book. These tools were learned at companies like Apple and Intuit and ServiceNow. These are accumulation of knowledge of some of the most successful customer experience companies, and I also use them at the University of California, San Diego to train the students there so that they could really know how to assess a customer experience. And so once you get customer experience intelligence, you have to have a place to put it. And so these are ideas and templates that are well proven, and they're kind of a manual process that could be automated. So anyway, so you've got that, and certainly you have me here. And so, you know, feel free, again, to share some of your ideas along the way. So what this book covers is many of the capabilities that are common to very successful customer experience companies with next generation Gen Z people. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at Gen Z and their customer experience revolution. Then we'll look at customer experience intelligence. What is a portfolio approach that these companies take? And then we'll look at some examples of best practices. And there's many, many best practices, but I've picked out a few best practices in particular that will not only help you, likely help you with your present interactions, but if you're thinking about artificial intelligence and applying them to human interactions, these best practices will help you out in a great way. So don't worry, I'm not going to read this, but it's for you to have. Everybody should have a definition of customer experience, okay? And when I was working on the first book with the user experience expert, Sean Van Tine, we also interviewed J.D. Power and Associates and several other companies that really had a great understanding and a whole lot of data about what was going on with the value of customer experience and who was doing it right. So we reworked the definition of customer experience. And to be kind of quick about it, it wasn't just touch points and all the things that kind of existed at that point in definitions. It's people's interactions with or about your company, and well, what do they interact with? And I call that a customer experience continuum. There's a continuum of things people interact with, and in this case, it's a company's messages, people, processes, products, and services. And those processes include technology. So that's the continuum, and then of course that gets multiplied by on the internet and off the internet and a hybrid of each. And then within the customer experience is the very important user experience. And you can have a user experience with a website, a mobile app, or you can have a user experience with the actual products and services that you're either trying out or buying. So the user experience is, again, it really tells the truth about, okay, what did I buy versus what did I get? So we'll start out looking at Gen Z, and there's a 2 up there because this is from chapter 2 in the book. Don't worry, you're not missing chapter 1 or anything. We're just taking a couple of chapters for the workshop this morning. So Gen Z is more different than any other generations compared. Now, it's kind of interesting that some people react to it favorably, some people are very interested in how different Gen Z is, and some people have a not so good reaction, okay? And that's not our job. Our job is to understand the people of Generation Z and how we can best serve them. So as we go through some of the characteristics of Gen Z, keep that in mind, okay? All right. We really need to understand them. So Gen Z certainly is the future of your business. It's going to be an enormous population. And it requires specific knowledge of Gen Z and their characteristics. And so if you are already in possession of that knowledge, that's a good thing. But you really, really need to understand this generation. And as my partner said, you don't want to think this is Millennials 2.0. That would be a huge mistake. So these are just some numbers. You've got these in your workbook, but enormous and important generation around the world, and very internationally connected generation, another characteristic of that. So Gen Zs are digital natives with internet-based technology, and as probably most of you know, they were born when the technology was in use, when the internet was common. When I was born, a very long time ago, according to my students, what's really interesting is heat was already in the house. Light bulbs were already being used. Air conditioning, some had boxes and windows, and others had central air. Color TV was just coming in. The reason why I'm mentioning this is all of these things were already there when I was born, so I didn't know an existence without it. And this generation, Gen Z, doesn't know an existence without the smartphone, without social mobile media, which came in about 2009, about 2 years after the iPhone was well accepted. And so a lot of their life experiences start out digital, and some are pure digital. Other life experiences they have start out digitally and turn into non-digital experiences. And strangely enough, so goes customer experience, right? And so this generation demands another best practice that could be used or not used with other generations, but more than any other generation, particularly in the digital world, they demand personalization. They want you to know them and then make it personal for me. Make it personal for me. And so that's almost not an option. And it's driven by so many options they have, whether it's business to business or whether it's business to consumer or a hybrid of both. They're experiencing the good, the bad, and the ugly of the digital world. And so what stands out, what is better and different for them, is going to be personalization. Does anybody want to share how they're presently personalizing interactions for Gen Z? Are you in a situation where you can share how you do that, just a little bit? Or do you do that?
We don't.
Okay.
I'm in healthcare, so the vast majority of our patients that members call us are 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. So we don't really have much of a Gen Z population right now.
Right now, okay. All right, interesting, thanks. Anybody else? Yes?
It's more leading Gen Z, so Gen Z in the workplace, not as a customer, but listening to them. It's very important for them to feel like they're integrated, that they have a purpose. And so rather than saying this is what we're gonna do, I'll say, what do you think we should do?
Interesting. So you actually, we can just make a skip ahead comment. When we talk about customer experience intelligence, you can get a flow in of what they're looking for and what they want. So that's awesome. So anybody else? Okay.
Yeah, I would say
Oh,
similarly, we
sure.
work with the university.
Yep.
So that's one of the fun parts is they're all Gen Z, right?
Yeah.
So we generally only have to deal with, there are some non-traditional students, but I would exactly reiterate your point. We don't tell them anything, we just ask questions. And it's about 80% non-voice. It's mostly they're either going into social.
Yep.
Who knew that you would want to use social media to get questions answered about a university? That wasn't a thing
Right.
when I was looking at colleges.
Yeah.
But just basically allowing them to ask questions and then be answered.
Yeah.
Which if you try that with some of your healthcare clients, they'd be mad. They're like, I'm calling for a doctor. Why are I want you to tell me.
Yeah, I want a personal interaction.
Yeah. So, but I would reiterate, it's just giving them the opportunity to ask questions and then go where they want it to go.
Yeah, and that supports another point that we'll get to, so I'll move on. But anybody else want to comment on that? It's really interesting because we really need that inflow from them to understand, because you can't guess. You can't afford really to be wrong too many times, right? And so here's something really interesting. Gen Z as a generation is in a position to do more quick comparisons of experiences with products, services, processes, and so forth. They've got access to so much information. And so what they do naturally more than any other generation is compare. They're comparing your people with another company's people. Okay, they're comparing products to products, services to service. And they don't stay within one industry. So if they have a great experience with the person at the Four Seasons Hotel, they're going to compare that experience with a person at a bank or online, whether they're buying airline tickets, buying PCs, or buying tickets to an event. They're going to compare. So, and I'll show you later an example where the pieces of the customer experience continuum are broken down, and we find out what the customer's favorite interactions are. And that really helps you understand. The reason why that's important is because their favorite customer experience and user experience interactions are setting the expectations for all other experiences that they want. That's really important to know. So, very important. They do it very quickly and usually with decent information and judgment, I've found. So here's a characteristic that I wouldn't have ever guessed myself, but again, I'm from a different generation. Words can hurt as much as physical assault. Think about that. Words can hurt about as much as physical assault. And it really is true. I had a couple of Gen Z students in my customer experience leadership class, and they took the first class, and by the second class they transferred out, and they called me and told me why, because they didn't like two students across the room. I said, well, you don't have to do a project with them. And if they bother you, you let me know. You're in my class. I want you to learn. And then I called the director and I said, is this true? The director said, yeah, and this is a trend, a pattern we're seeing across the university. So it wasn't just in my class, and I didn't take it personally, of course, but I was more interested. It's like, well, how can you make that judgment? You only took the first class. I read you the syllabus. And I was rather excited about it because we were going to have a good guest speaker and everything. But they were gone because their perception about the words that somebody said across the room was very hurtful. So what that means also is this also happens in print. Why are you yelling at me? I go, well, I didn't yell at you at print. Oh yes, you bolded this. This is yelling. You're yelling at me. I'm like, okay, all right. For me to understand. And so think about what that means for interactions that you're making for Gen Zs, whether it's in a written word or whether it's a speech interaction with a real human or an artificial voice. So those need to be tested to make sure that the perception of the people who are developing the interaction is not that much different than the actual result they get with a Gen Z person. Words can be hurtful. So that's not found in any other generation as far as I know. Gen Z, privacy matters. Now, it's very interesting that they use social mobile media very frequently, but the Gen Z people that we interviewed and the Gen Z people that we did research about were really concerned about their privacy. They're very choosy about who they really engage with on an intimate basis, unless they have a characteristic immaturity. But in general, the one thing we have to figure out is how can we assure them that the interactions and the user experiences we're providing send the message to them, we really, really take care of your privacy. We're not just speaking words or showing you messages about it. We have behavior, and they very much understand the difference between messaging and actual behavior. So they're actually looking for companies that it will take care of this issue for them so that they can trust. Because since the beginning of their exposure to digital, they find the majority of those interactions to be not trustful.
I'm surprised just because, from my perspective, some of these folks put everything out on social media. There is nothing that's private, it seems like.
To me,
surprising to me.
yeah, I think if they're teenagers, maybe everything, yeah, you know, I just had to, in the last few years, learn that word, actually, tweenagers. I was like, what is that, tweenagers? You know, it's, is it a hybrid or a mongrel, or anyway. But yeah, my perception was that, you know, all bets were off and anything could show up. But when they have a level of maturity, let's say, then they suddenly realize, oh my goodness. Now, again, there's always exceptions to the rule, always. But yeah, that's very interesting here. Let me just.
Kind of interesting, Jeff, kind of a different example is I was working with a company that has a lot of elderly customers, and a lot of them would wait till after 5 o'clock because they knew they'd get the AI.
Yeah.
They felt more comfortable that everything would stay private and that they're not having to share some of these details. They felt personal with a live human, but they were fine with sharing it with a bot.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. And I can see how with privacy and security being important to Gen Z, that maybe AI will even be able to play into that a little bit moving forward.
Yeah, and again, every use case is different. You know, every business and customer. So I would say find out about this with your customers, with your Gen Z customers. You know, where are they on the continuum of caring about it, and also where do they think you are on that continuum? So great, thanks, Aaron. That was a great point. Aiden lives in Los Angeles. He was typical of many of the Gen Zs we interviewed. He says, for personal privacy and security reasons, I don't use automated virtual assistants because the technology is in the elementary stages. However, in the future, I might have to use it because there won't be a choice. And when I was face to face with Aiden, I said, wow, the thing that went off in my mind is, if he has to use it, why should he be bummed out, right? Why can't we make it so that he's looking forward to using it? He should be using and it either makes him happy or feel neutral. But at this point, he doesn't. Who wants to be a customer forced into something, right? You don't want to be forced to buy something, and you don't want to be forced to interact with something. So really, what you want to do, I think, is create a virtual experience where there's a desire to have it. And of course, the high road is that I want to create a virtual experience and interaction where you will actually tell somebody else how great it is to, you know, create more business. So most Gen Zs have a real focus on their work-life balance. And that has been both positive and not positive. But the main thing to understand is, if you're looking at the whole person, a whole person from Gen Z, it's how can the interactions and what you do for them help them create a work-life balance? Is it saving them time? Is it helping them make decisions? It's a complex decision. Can we use technology in combination with a human being to help them make a complex decision quicker so that they feel like they've got more work-life balance? This is just kind of an example I'm putting out there. And as somebody mentioned earlier this morning to me, they'll walk away from a job if they feel like work-life balance is off because of the job. Now, I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm going to say, okay, how do you help them maintain that? And so understanding that from a user and customer experience standpoint and implementing that in interactions for them, I think is an absolute necessity if you want to scale up and you want them to refer people to you, whether it's B2B or B2C. And I've heard these two quotes many times. I won't read them, but you know, it's like, okay, you just got to take those number of clicks out of there, man. This is taking too long. This is an impatient generation. Because when the speed of microchips and interacting with fast internets and advanced smartphones are setting your expectations as you're growing up, for how quickly things come, then it's different than other generations, and we need to know that. What is their expectations of time? And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Stress reduction is a common goal. The aggregate view of Gen Zs is it's a very stressed out generation. And I don't blame them, actually, because from the time they were born, you have all this, it's like this fire hose of information and data and pretenders and real things coming at them all at once. And a lot of them, as they mature, need to be taught how to shut it off. But think about how that affects you developmentally, because it's like, what do you do with this? I mean, just listening to some of them respond to some of our questions, I was overwhelmed with some of their experiences. I had an emotional reaction listening to them. I was like, wow, God, that's, because we all know how it is to be overwhelmed. Well, just think about this. This is a generation that, for most part, is overwhelmed. Customer experience leadership, user experience leadership. How can I help them not be overwhelmed with my customer experience strategy, but also when they're interacting, whether it's online or offline? How can I help reduce that stress? So if you can reduce the stress and you can help them with work-life balance, that is going to be huge for them. And that starts building up trust and something they call transparency, right? That's included. Yes?
Jeff, one
Joe.
thing we've seen too is this generation is much more used to being scheduled. Play dates. Like I didn't schedule a play
Right.
date, like when I was a kid from 1:55 to 2:15. Right?
Yeah.
I just rode my bike to somebody's porch.
Exactly.
And they've got softball, baseball, tennis, dance. And what we found is they love is a sense of empowerment if they can schedule an appointment.
That's a great point.
Where a different generation, I look at it like, screw you, I'm gonna call when I'm available, right? But
Yeah.
they want 2:15 to 2:25, and they will give you all the information in the world. So they are a scheduled generation,
Yep.
not a fly by in the seat of your pants type generation.
Yeah.
So they love that schedule piece.
You know, Joel, that's such a great point, because in prior generations with certain customers, they get offended because, well, you're offloading your administration to me and I'm the customer. Now, there's other personas or other customer types where they'll say, okay, I will do that admin part if it saves me time. But to your point, with Gen Z, it doesn't matter whether it saves them time or not, they want to do it. Yeah, thank you, that's awesome. So, this is a distracted generation. Now, it's distracted, but it's easily distractible. And that's online and offline. And in a way, it's kind of like helping them focus. How do I help them focus on my messages? How do I help them focus on other things? So the user experience developers or information architects call it conditions of use. And usually you had to understand what are the conditions, let's say a mobile application is being used in the environment. Is it a busy doctor's office? Is it on a train? Well, just with this generation, conditions of use have to be understanding that this is distracted. So how can I create, whether it's a mobile app, software, whether it's using AI for a chatbot, how can I help them focus on what's at hand? Because you're competing with all of these things, and they, on a daily basis, are taking in more information willingly and not willingly than any other generation before. So it's very important to understand that. Distractions definitely is a big competitor of yours. You're competing with, so more specifically, if I find out, well, what are they distracted by online and offline, I can then figure my way out to making an interaction for them that kind of cuts through some of the noise. Very important. Building trust, sometimes referred to as the transparency factor. They really do value integrity, and they want to place confidence in people and processes. And the sad part is that when I ask a lot of them why, or I listen to the why part, it's because in the digital world they understand that not everything out there is going to be genuine to them. And that's, to me, that's a little scary. You know, they view it as, if you want to be better and different, be transparent with me, be honest, help me with a lot of the things we've talked about before. And that's going to go a long way with you building trust so that they will stay with you. And also, again, the high road, they will also become advocates for you. And that's very valuable. Any questions or comments about that? No? Okay. They read online reviews, but as they mature, particularly after age 18, they're more likely to question a lot of reviews because they totally understand that a lot of reviews are bogus, whether they're simply bogus in their writing or posting or the pictures, or they're paid for. And so they have their friends and they have their ways, online and offline, of really cutting through the noise to make a decision, a purchase decision, let's say, or a decision to invest in a company, that kind of thing. So, how we doing? We're doing good here. Now this is a persona, which is a summary of a customer type, and one persona represents many people like that one persona. And a persona can be a customer, a user, or an influencer. And in this case, the boxes represent elements, and you can decide which elements to use in your persona. And one of the main reasons for having personas is that you can share them with people in your company so that it's as if they have a customer right there. And there was one insurance company in San Diego that actually made human-form cardboard personas. It really creeped me out, actually. You know, it's like there's real people back there and there's cardboard people back there. But if you read the messaging inside the cardboard, it was the characteristics of the people that they serve. And so they had analog versions like the cardboard versions of personas, but they also had all that information shared on the company internet, so that anytime somebody needed to understand a customer and understand what the company knew about a customer, you know, within reason, you know, privacy-wise and all of that, they had access to it. So even if the person at the company wasn't involved directly with a customer, but they were doing something that they would affect it, they had that information, and it was refreshed. In the template you'll be getting, you will see a customer experience buyer persona, and it's blank, but it is suggestions of elements that you could use and include to get information about, to populate that persona and say, aha, that's what that person is about. This is how we can best serve that person with customer experience strategy and interactions. And again, that's going to help you with the whole customer experience continuum. So in this case, the summary here is that Kylie is caring, mature, thoughtful, and independent in her age and all of that. What you don't have here is the whys, because I anonymized this. But we understand the whys behind everything, because what drives me crazy is when people make pictures without any intel behind them, especially journey maps, and I try not to even use the word journey map, because it's like every time I ask about it, tell me about the intel of what behind that, and 2 out of 10 is okay, but 8 out of 10, it's an art exercise. But anyway, so you'll have that template. Oh, and by the way, if you want to know more about this, this is the page number in the book where that's covered, so to make it easy for you to tie the workbook into the book itself. It's a socially responsible generation. And as my cousin's daughter told me, it was just 2 weeks ago, she prefers Starbucks. She's Gen Z, she prefers Starbucks to Pete's. And I said, why? And she said, because when Starbucks harvests the coffee plant, they take it out, including the roots. But Pete's, they just whack the coffee plant right, you know, at the ground level. And I asked her how she knew that, because, I mean, I'm sure she isn't standing out in a coffee field, but you know, and she told me, and she learned it from a good place, and all of this. So that was part of her decision-making process. It doesn't matter what I think about that. What matters is if I want to give her a good experience, I have to care about that. And so you need to understand what your Gen Z customers care about that's socially responsible and then decide to support some of that cause, okay? And then be able to let them know that you care about that. It's very, very, very important, and there's a huge emotion attached to this. So, how does anybody want to share, how are you connecting with Gen Zs from a socially responsible way? Anybody want to share that? In other words, you know, how have you found out, well, you know, these are the top 3 or 5 social causes that my Gen Z customers care about, and here's how we're letting them know, or here's what we're actually really doing to support those causes, and we're not being shy about letting them know about that. Anybody want to share that? Okay. All right. Well, sometimes you feel. Oh, thank you. Yes.
So I work for Experian, and we're very big on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I know right now is a hot topic. But we have not changed our stance. We continue to have the same programs, the same, focus.
Yeah.
We do. We just did a program with historic Black colleges. Where we did a scholarship opportunity, project management. They came to our home office. They presented, and we publish this, and we make it known that we're not going to walk away from that, because that's important to us as a company, and we're going to live our values regardless, because it's important to us, and we know it's important to our customers.
That's, and that's a bold decision, and that's awesome, because right now Target, which was the favorite offline place to shop for Gen Zs, is paying the price. Yeah, and that's a live. This is what I love about this subject, is that this is going on now. This is live, real stuff. This isn't academic stuff, and so thank you for sharing that, because the thing is you do have to make decisions about, do I want to stay connected with them, or do I want to disconnect with them? Wow, I mean, that's a powerful thing to disconnect with them, and again, who knows what the decision tree looks like behind Target's decision, but I love what you just said, because I want them with me into the future. So, all right, so the marketing messages that engage and convert millennials to customers will not work with Gen Zs. Well, maybe some of the marketing messages will, but the best thing you can do, and it's another best practice, is make a marketing message for them and test it with actual Gen Zs, and there's many ways to test it, okay, but you definitely want to test your messages. And the messages that Gen Zs like the most include being inclusive and diverse, goes back to your point, concise and to the point, quick and efficient, and I'll talk about meet them where they are in a second, meaningful and authentic with visual appeal. Those are like the characteristics. Now, meet them where they are is very, very important. Social media, for instance, when I say social media, it's just a category. So when we're doing customer experience work and we want to understand social media, I don't want to say, do you use social media? And they say yes or no. I want to know, which social media do you use? And then the next question is, do you use social media in your purchasing decision process? And if it's an if yes, then I want to know, how do you use it? Are you passive? Are you active? Do you upload pictures? Do you download? Do you write reviews? But the interesting thing is that you want to meet them where they are. So there's hundreds of social media platforms, and there's going to be more coming. So there could be switching activity. But here's the thing that's really interesting. I did an experiment with a group of Gen Zs. I told them something in person, like we're in person right now. I'm telling you, I'm talking to you. It was instructions for how to do a particular assignment. And I got no response. It's a week later. And I said, okay, I'm putting this out in written form in PDF. I resent it out, same exact words I used. I got 1 or 2 responses. And I'm thinking, okay, I can get mad or I can get interested. And I got interested. So you know what I did next. I made a little video with the same exact words. Man, I got a big response. It was almost immediate. Now, when I was growing up, there was a guy named Marshall McLuhan who said the media was the message, and he was talking about people who didn't understand the difference between TV and not TV. Well, if Marshall McLuhan was around today, man, he'd be like, so right. It's not just online and offline, it's which platform you use. It wasn't good enough that it was a PDF, and it wasn't good enough that I told you in person. But when it was on video, man, that response rate went right through the roof. So my lesson was, I've got to meet them where they are. I've got to meet them on the media that they're already using. And then if they switch media, I have to know that. I have to be intelligent about this and kind of follow them. Any questions or comments about that? Yes?
I totally agree with this. I guess my question is, how do you balance the messaging to Gen Z, to millennials, right? Because it's usually the same pool, the same resources, channels, methods.
Yeah.
So how would you balance that?
That's a really good question. Well, it's kind of like if I have a website and I'm serving two different markets, I want to make sure they can self-identify on the home page somehow, and then choose that, and I actually have to give them a different messaging experience. But as soon, from a scaling and economic standpoint, as soon as I can blend that experience to be the same, then it's easier to scale. But you may have to have, and I would test it. In other words, if you know with testing, whether it's live testing or A/B testing, that Gen Zs like that message and it means what you want it to them, then you're going to need to test it with millennials and other generations and see if it means the same thing. Because it might, and if it did, you and I would be lucky. No sarcasm. I mean, it would be like, okay, that's a relief, work done. If it doesn't, then unfortunately we have to keep the messaging separate. It's a tough thing because it's a big difference. So great question.
Book, Jeff.
Yeah, what?
You have the book, the Millennial book.
Ah.
That's the volume 2.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Next book.
You know what's really, it's interesting you mentioned that because, you know, this was a long time in coming, and I put that out, and then I had an interview with I think it was CX Today, and the first question is when's the next one coming out? And I'm like, oh man, I just got done with this one. You know, so, but the ideas pour in, and I appreciate when people give me good ideas because I go back to them. And that, yes?
How do you balance the messaging with revenue? I mean, demographically, when you have to look at what you're providing, and then do I need to make the expenditure for that, or do I just need to be ready to when that revenue from that generation gets to be equivalent to everybody else?
Well, you know, it does come down to return on investment, and when you think this generation is going to have the return on investment that you'll need, and also getting some feedback here, sorry, and also how important will those customers be? So some businesses actually take losses for a little while in acquiring those customers. But if you have what I call a customer experience effect, when you finally acquire them, there's a significant amount of advocacy, then your cost of sales is going to go down, your cost of marketing and support is going to go down also. So it is a balancing act. And different companies and different cultures feel differently about how much upfront work and how long do I want to wait before that ROI comes in, you know. So that's a great question. And so yeah, it's kind of like if you've managed products before, you've got you've got products in the growth stage and maturity and in decline. So I would think about it sort of like that. It's if you know they're coming, but they might not be in the high growth stage yet, but you already got them in the early stages, and when they grow, you're there for them in a good way. So, and it depends on your actual numbers and the value of the market and so forth. But yes?
I think adding on to that, as I had a whole list of stats, but with Gen Z, kind of the stats to support why we should be focusing on that generation, why they're so important for us to be learning about, based on their size, their spending, maybe some of those stats you can share.
Yeah, well, again, I won't go through the stats right now, but if anybody needs those, or go back to the earlier stat page, I think it might have been the third page in this, where you're looking at the size of the generation, globally as well as in the US, and then looking at the value. So it's kind of like at any company, there's an addressable market, and how important is that going to be to your company? And then make those decisions from there. But I would love to chat more about that question, because there's, to your point, there's a lot of great ideas that we could put into kind of building a model and a method of deciding when to start investing in that generation, and then what would be the gap to the return on investment and so forth. So, great question, yes.
Any particular social platforms amongst your clientele where they're getting the best engagement with Gen Z and millennials?
Yep, I'll be coming to that today,
Right.
this morning. No, that you're ahead of me. That's good. That's good. Yeah, and again, I say, and that's for right now, because there's other media platforms coming on. It really is a surprise that Gen Z likes to shop offline, and they really enjoy being able to get out and being able to trust what they see and try on what they see. Kylie, Gen Z, likes to combine offline and online, and what she'll do is she wants to make sure something fits or the color's right, but while she's doing that in a store, she's going to then make the purchase online. So there's two interactions at once. Now for this generation, and I'll talk more about this with customer experience intelligence and best practices actually, is for this generation what's really interesting is some of them do 3 and 4 interactions at once. And we have to make sure all those interactions make sense. If they're having them all at once, does it make sense? Whether it's a live person, a chat bot, they're in a store and they're looking at a website. I've seen it. I've observed that. That all has to make sense to the person at the center of using that. And that's a big demand from this generation, but that's what they expect. So Amazon's a favorite place. However, for most of them, they don't love Amazon except for the efficiency and buying familiar products. And then we had Aiden say that Amazon is diabolical. So he has a love-hate relationship with Amazon. He'll go to them because he likes the efficiency and he understands they're good. But they also have a lot of empathy for smaller companies, and what is Amazon doing to those smaller companies? So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out. And then Target, I bring that up to your example. Before the politics invaded here, Target was the favorite to shop in the physical world because of these low prices, clean stores, bright colors. They also liked the fact that nobody hassled them, but the people were there if they needed them. And so it's really interesting because Target is so old. I mean, I think it came from Woolworth or something back in the 50s or 60s. I don't know, we'll have to look, but I think it's pretty cool that they still like this, and yet many generations before it also liked it for different characteristics. But let's keep it, this is one to watch, is what happens with this diversity thing. Does this generation then turn off? Is that it for Target? Are the late millennials the last generation that's going to continue to embrace Target now that there's things going on that are political? So Andronico's, which is a grocery store in Los Angeles. When you walk into Andronico's, somebody is looking at you. They're not watching you to make sure you don't stuff apples in your pocket or anything. What they're doing is they're figuring out how they can help you, and then they offer to help you. It's almost a grocery concierge, and I find that really interesting. And I spoke to a couple of Gen Z Andronico customers, and they were like exploding with enthusiasm about Andronico's. Trader Joe's, Nordstrom, and Zara are other favorites. So this gives you an idea of that, it isn't all digital. Gen Z, hang on for a second, let me see. There we go. Gen Z, they do place a premium on customer experience over price. So if they have disposable income, they will buy the better customer experience. They will buy the better user experience. And they are really sensitive to how good the user experience is online. They don't have a lot of patience for bad UX, user experience. And if they get great customer experiences and user experiences, they will recommend them. They will use their social media to recommend them. Thank you. So, Darren, this answers your question. Right now, today, YouTube, TikTok, WhatsApp, Telegram, and Instagram. YouTube is by far they'll go to it for how-tos. They'll share videos and so forth. But this is something to watch, and depending on what information you like to use to keep track of what Gen Z, which platform they're using now, which is coming on, because new platforms are going to come on in social media. They know that I'm really old because I still use Facebook, and I don't use it a lot, but I got forced on there when people in my family started to retire and wanted me to play some farmer game or something. I said I'm a little busy for that. I didn't understand that, but anyway. It really is interesting. So right now, today, those are in the tops. And so, as I mentioned before, it isn't, never leave social media as a category. It's, I want specifics about the social media. And what I love is, once you understand that, you can sort of insert your company into that social media for the experience that they want. We mentioned automated virtual assistants before. Again, they're concerned about privacy, and they really want these things to work for them. But Kylie says the Amazon Echo, for instance, she thinks it's really creepy, and she represented many others. And so then the question is, why do you think it's creepy? And there can be debate, but how do you prove to them that they should have the experience with that device? How do you prove that that can be trusted? Let's take the creepiness out of it. Bottom line here is, it really is essential to understand the specifics of this generation as an aggregate, but also as individuals, as customers, users, as well as the influencers and that. So I really do think that if the companies that are understanding Gen Z the most and are giving them the great customer and user experiences, those are going to be the leaders into the future. So you have to decide, are they important enough? And I love that question back there about when do you start investing them, because you do have to make that decision, because you don't want to be behind the curve and have to make it. So anyway, any questions before we get on to the kind of the KPI challenge? Okay. Yes, thank you. Well, let me get a little bit of water here, and I will mute it just for a second. Thank you. All right, thank you. So you'll see this in your workbooks, and this is the key performance indicator to next generation challenge, and really what we're trying to do is get a feel for what are you measuring for interaction success and business success versus what Gen Z cares about. So we're fresh off the trail of some of the key things they care about. So what I'd love you to do is share a little bit with yourself and with me as we go. So the first thing is, a best practice of customer experience leaders is they figure out what customers care about, and to quote one of my colleagues, you measure what matters to customers. And so these are easy ones. These aren't the measures of what customers care about. Numbers of customers retained, percent market share, dollar value of new customer contracts signed per quarter, percentage of website visitors converting to customers. But measures that matter mean that you have to know the customer likely more than your competitor, okay? And how much time will this laboratory management software save me in locating frozen lab samples stored globally for an additional analysis? That came from a real project, and I can share more later, but after lunch. This was a pharmaceutical company that this is what really mattered to them, is how quickly their frozen samples could be found, and they were frozen samples stored in these kind of bio-silos all over the United States. Who knew? This is my favorite because it was a suit company. As a matter of fact, it was at a SOCAP conference, this one, and a suit company thought, well, we care about our customers, and they wrote down all kinds of measures that had the word customer in it. 10 measures, but none of them cared. I said, well, tell me, you came here from out east, so it's 3,000 miles. It was in San Diego. What do you think about when you take your suit out of the suitcase after it's been in there for 12 hours? Because the thing I'm thinking about is time to wrinkle free. I'm thinking, right? I don't want to look like I slept in my clothes because you won't listen to me, right? And right? So a measure that they care about is time to wrinkle free, okay? And how long will it take for a customer to receive a response from a chatbot? Or if I complete this, I love this one. Most contact us forms on websites are a homework assignment that leaves people wondering, will I ever get a response? So anyway, this is the kind of thing. So really what I'd like you to do is, and I know it's a little bit small on the page in your workbook, but pick out 10 if you can. What's the performance measure name? Put it there. And then the scale is 1, it doesn't matter to Gen Z. 10, it greatly matters. So those are very balanced scales. And then complete that and take about 15 minutes and put some thought into that. And then I'll be around to, if you want to ask questions. But then what I'd like to do is ask you to share what percentage of the ones that you put down Gen Z would likely care about, and why, of course. And so that form looks like this. So feel free and do that. I'll just step out for a second. I'll be right back to answer any questions, but think about that. I should have mentioned this before we started. If you're hungry, go and bring in food, okay? Because I don't want you to be thinking about like pizza or whatever when I'm trying to make a point, and then you say, all this guy did was talk about pizza when I was up there. But yeah, don't be hungry, because I can't compete against that. No, even when I would teach 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., I go against university policy and say, bring a sandwich in, or soup, or chicken tikka masala. I don't have anything delivered because the director would get bummed out, but because you can't go up against nature if people are hungry. So would anybody like to either share specific things that they wrote down, or what percent of what you wrote down do you think that Gen Z would care about, or any insights you got? So kind of those three. Anybody want to kind of, yes, go ahead.
So do you want me to share everything or just one thing?
A couple select points would be great.
Well, one of the things that we look at that I think we might care about a little bit more, but I think they do, but percentage of escalated chatbot calls to humans.
Okay.
Because I find that our Gen Zs and millennials and all those folks, they don't really want to have to talk to somebody. They want to they want to use the technology, right? So if they have to go to a human or had to call at all, they're already disappointed.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting.
So to kind of go into the next one, it's why did I have to call at all? So we look at what contacts happened and why, so we can see if we can automate it or fix it or something like that.
Okay, and those are a couple of great examples. Was everybody able to hear that, or?
I've never been accused of that.
Okay, yeah. Well, you know what? Because I wasn't sure if you could. Hang on, we're having a microphone come.
Uh-oh.
So
say it again.
Yeah. If you don't mind.
Okay,
we're
so
great.
we did percentage of chatbot contacts that got escalated to humans. I think we probably care about it a little bit more, but I think they care about it because they didn't want to talk to a human anyway. Right? And then why did I have to call at all? So we look at what are the reasons for the contact. So we can either make it where they don't have to contact at all, or so we could automate it.
Got it. Thank you.
What's your industry?
Banking.
Okay.
Yeah,
just grab it. Yep.
So being a technology company, obviously support is one of the biggest things for us. But we actually we run almost like an internal contest where it's not just about support resolution accuracy and time to resolve, but acknowledgement of the support ticket that comes in. There's nothing worse than sending off that ticket you might get an auto response, thank you for your, but you have no idea if there's another person that's picking that up. So when we have a ticket come in, it goes out to like the CEO, COO, myself as Chief Revenue Officer, and we actually have contests to see how quickly one of us can respond and say, hey, got your ticket, the support team's got it. You know, if you don't get something back within the end of the day on a resolution, please reach out to me. And that's a big thing for us. I mean, we want to get them resolved and accurately resolved, but just letting somebody know that a human being has seen the ticket, that is, I think, really big to our clients, and it's really important to us.
Yeah, that's probably regardless of any generation, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter who they are.
Yeah, that would be great.
You can project? Okay, fine. I'll walk over here and try to be.
You must have taken a projection workshop.
Yeah, that's what I should think. I had in the effort score. So I've always worked with companies that have doing a customer effort. How hard is it for me to get my product or my service? And conversely to that is know me when I'm contacting you. So I put those as the top two items as wanting to be a KPI.
Ah, great.
That's what I had too.
Yeah.
Two of the top ones, same thing.
Same thing.
How do you feel about customer effort? ECS.
You asking me or well, we'll
To measure customer effort?
yeah, we'll talk about that with a customer experience intelligence, but customer effort is incredibly important. Okay, how hard will somebody work to even discover your company? How hard will they work to use your products or get support? And this generation, with its impatience, it becomes magnified. So it's extra. I think it's extra important.
KPI is ignored or pushed down in the stack. Where I think before you even get to any of the omni-channel or digital experiences, the effort starts first, right? How hard is it to get to those or stay in those channels?
Yeah, I call that discovery. Go ahead.
Right, clicks, how many clicks and all that.
Yeah. Well, like I had put up on one of the slides, too many clicks, I'm out of here. And then as we'll talk about after the break, also there's time. How are you using customer time? There's your business time. So there's, again, I call it the customer experience 4. Now, you've got that in the workbook, but it has to do with level of effort. But if you're burning my time, and I think you're burning my time with that interaction, and it's not good. And yes, there's high touch and low touch people and all of that. Those are different personas, but this all goes toward level of effort and what their experience is with that interaction. So no, these are great questions. So anybody else want to share either something specific or an insight, or anybody get an idea? Oh yes, go ahead.
So just response time, I mean, that's a given, but I have a real life example. Just a few weeks ago, I was buying some new tires for my Mustang, and I buy tires like a couple times a year, unfortunately. But there's like 3 different websites I'll go to, and they're all about the same price, and you know, they all had a chatbot. And I gave the chatbot about 30 seconds, and I was already on to the next website. But I will say that what I thought was cool is that the chatbot first thing it asked me was my name and phone number. So as I'm looking at the other website, they didn't call me within 2 minutes, and then they got the set. So
Time, how they used your time. Yeah, and to your point, and you're probably more patient than, let's say, somebody from Gen Z. Okay, so start thinking about that, because you know that has to do with almost everything. How there's business time, market time, and customer time, and so we need to understand that. And again, that's something I'll chat about when we talk about. We'll really need to know from a customer experience intelligence. Thanks for that great example. That's a really great example.
I'll add one more thing too for Gen Z. I mean, if there's even more than one person in queue, or they know the average wait time is more than 2 minutes, I mean, you offer that queue call back immediately. Because again, they're not going to wait more than a minute.
Well, you think about how they came to learn their experience of time, which was different than other generations learning their experience of time, and so that sets their expectations. And so.
It used to be a minute. We used to be able to say, oh, their tolerance before abandonment is a minute, whether it be voice or chat or whatever. Now it's not. It's like seconds, like 10 seconds.
Oh, it's scary.
Consumers have more options now. Right? It used to be, well, I got a hold. Right. Now, the only thing I will tell you, we have not found the callback functionality as but we have found that the hold time will be longer because they multitask. They might be on their iPad, on their laptop, and on their phone.
Oh yeah.
So even though I think they are impatient, they sometimes have 3 things going on at a time. So we will actually see a little bit more tolerance, and they're not really upset if they had to hold longer because they were doing God knows what else, or they were on TikTok or whatever they were doing.
Will you see it where they're on that chat with the same
Thanks, Gina.
as while they're holding?
Yes, and that's what messes with, they mess with my stats. Like, they abandoned.
They mess with my stats.
Oh, that can't be counted as an evasion because they did it with the chat. You know what I'm saying? So we need to do.
I love that. Like, don't mess with my my
Off
stats.
focus, that they, can't you measure off focus versus on focus?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, it's interesting. Some of you have a copy of the first book, and in the first book, I was able to interview Steve Swayze of Netflix, who worked with Reed Hastings of Netflix. And on that note, they have tremendous data about people and their activities online and their favorites, but they also have people come to Netflix headquarters in Los Gatos and watch them watch TV. And to your point, they said to me during the interviews, you wouldn't believe what people, particularly young people, are doing while they're watching TV, and we need to know that. We need to know that. Are they, at the time, they were on Twitter while they're watching TV. Then another time they were watching another TV while they were watching TV, because they were watching TV on the laptop and they were watching TV on the TV itself. And then texting. And so yeah, you start thinking about that, but that's how they learned about it, and they adjusted it. And also that's how Netflix, more than their competitors, knew that if you were playing like the Wii game, or there was a bunch of games that people would play, that people would want to stop and use the display for their game to watch a movie, to take a break. Netflix was the first one who understood that, because they were watching people watch. And that was, the stats weren't going to tell you that. But, and that messed with their numbers. So anyway. All right, we got about another minute before you can take a break. Anybody else want to share or anything else? Okay. So break time, and thank you for your time this morning. And after the break, we'll talk about customer experience intelligence. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. You start thinking about what smart is, okay? And one thing I learned from experience, and also interviewing a lot of the people that I've interviewed at a lot of great companies, is that they replace the word effectiveness in place of smart. So certainly I might be smart in one situation, but I'm not smart in another. I might be effective in another one. So think about that what you want is customer experience intelligence that is effective. And because just knowing a bunch of things about a customer isn't necessarily going to really make your customer experience strategy or the interactions or the user experience a good thing. And I found more often than not, even in some conversations, whether it's one-to-one or on some podcasts about customer experience intelligence, that they leave out interactions. And that blows me away. I'm like, you have customer experience intelligence, but you left let's talk about being intelligent about the interaction. And so when I look at the best companies that are creating great customer experiences for next-gen people, I realize that they've got a cultural and systematic combination of internal and external inputs, whether it's data or words or observations. They somehow put this together in a portfolio and get insights from it, and then make decisions about it. And so that's kind of what we're going to be going over in just a second. Now, the goal for the best in customer experience is not customer satisfaction, and that could take a half an hour to discuss, but customer satisfaction, or CSAT, or whatever you want to call it, nobody at Netflix or ServiceNow, none of these companies have ever told me, well, you know what, our innovation gives us great customer SAT scores, and that's what we aim for. That doesn't work. But the answer explains why a lot of customer experience, I call these companies customer experience makers, they're CX makers. A lot of these companies pass by companies that have high SAT scores, and the reason why is because they've got better customer experience intelligence. And more often than not, when I ask these companies who their biggest competitor is, they don't say another company. They say competing for customers' time. We have to know the customer way better, okay? I know way better is a scientific term, but way better than our competitors, because if we can get their time more frequently and deeper than our competitors, the game's over, especially if we can deliver a better customer experience. That was a learning for me, and that is true of Netflix, ServiceNow, Amazon. I can go on, and I didn't interview them at once. This was over a period of years, and asking them, who's your biggest competitor? Almost all of them say, we're competing for the customer's time. And that's all kinds of customers, not just Gen Z. So what do they replace customer sat with? They replace it with customer advocacy or referrals. And so what they want to do is they want to develop interactions that create a high probability that each interaction in the customer experience has a high probability or a high possibility that somebody might go and refer somebody to them or advocate. And this is kind of a different subject. It's a behavioral economics subject, but you really need to please somebody about average 8 to 10 times or 8 to 10 interactions before they'll decide, hey, I think I'm going to actually post something or make a referral online or offline. Now, that varies by company and industry and so forth. So here is a metric, an interesting metric, is what percentage of an interaction that's used is causing advocacy. And so this is kind of the picture in the minds of a lot of these companies when they're developing or improving or innovating customer interactions, is they want interactions to cause referrals and advocacy. And when we ask people about things, we never ask them, would you advocate? No, the question is structured like this. The question is, and this is after a few questions about the experience they've had with the company, is, did you advocate or refer anybody to this company? If yes, why? If no, why not? That's the bold question, okay? If you don't want to know the answer to that question, you word it this way. You go, would you? Would you? Well, you know, I might see you on the weekend also. But now we're back to the problem with customer satisfaction is it's not a behavior. When somebody will actually take their time and behave in a way that's in favor of your company, that's a lot different than, as my friends at J.D. Power told me, the customer sat is the difference between what somebody expected and what they think they got at a given point in time. And they only think about it when you ask them about it. But if you've already advocated or referred somebody, that's a big deal. Like when other customers of Intuit go onto the QuickBooks website to fix other customers' problems, that blows me away. I mean, that's an amazing thing. And so that's the level we're talking about here. Yes?
How does Net Promoter Score fit into all this?
I always get asked that, and first let me ask you a question. Do you spend thousands of dollars a month on Net Promoter Score? Okay, so I can answer this. Because I was in a room once where I thought I'd be killed because they were paying. The genius about Net Promoter, the short answer on Net Promoter Score is, if you want to use it as an indicator in a portfolio of inputs for intelligence, that's okay. But the genius was that back in 2003, the author of the concept behind it got it published in Harvard Business Review, and the genius is how they sell it as an all-purpose thing, and I'll be blunt about this, to people who don't know better, okay? Don't quote me on that, because once I was in a room where almost everybody who worked at a company where they were paying thousands of dollars a month for NPS. And then my friends at Forrester, J.D. Power, and so forth, they just they freak out, and in a good way. It's not scalable. You can't tie it to a persona. You can't. How does it relate to non-internet activities? Now there's people who have written articles, and I used to collect these on how to fix NPS, but I stopped collecting those articles because it's like, well, just build your own customer experience portfolio, you know, your Intel portfolio, and get smart about it. But again, that has the potential to be a third rail topic, depending on how much you're paying the NPS folks through their program to tell you that everything's okay. And then they'll cite all kinds of data that because of our scores, this company was able to do this and that. And it's not statistically significant, not according to me, but according to my people who are statistics experts. So for me, I admire how they sold it and built a program around it. But if you already had NPS coming in, if Netflix relied only on NPS, you wouldn't know who Netflix is today. That's just my opinion. So sorry, I'm not ambivalent about that because I hear it all the time. Sometimes when I was first starting to hear it, I was afraid I was going to stay up all night and dream about people asking me about it, because the reality is that if you have your own intelligence portfolio, they don't know your customers like you know your customers. And also, I'm going to be going over some things that NPS could never tell you, okay? So anyway, sorry you don't mind my passion about that, but today there's so many better ways of doing it than let's not guess, and oh, it's crazy. Anyway, wow. That to the point where I forgot where my pointer is. So these are some of the companies that use a portfolio approach for customer experience intelligence, and there's more, okay? And certainly Netflix is one of them, Nordstrom, ServiceNow, Ally Bank, and so forth. So if you've got really effective customer experience intelligence coming in and you're converting it to, you're doing analysis or having the analysis automated in part, but you're popping insights from it about interactions, and then you're getting recommendations and action. That's kind of what you like to follow. What you find is that it can be prescriptive. Now, prescription just wants to fix something. So it'll tell you how to fix, you know, and there's decisions. Do I leave the interaction alone? Do I fix it? Do I improve it? Or do I innovate a completely different interaction? And then when it's really good, it can be predictive. It's got to be timely, because it won't matter. If it isn't timely, it won't matter for your profitability. It also won't matter to the customer, and particularly Gen Z. The windows are short. And then what people tell me is that it reduces the guesswork associated with profitable customer experience. Anybody want to share how you're doing customer experience at this time? Customer experience intelligence, I should say. Okay, all right. Well, if you decide you want to burst out and tell me, let me know, and we'll do it. And even if you want to say NPS again, you can do that too. So no worries.
One thing I'll say is, I mean,
yeah.
I think in the last year we've come a long ways, and it's even getting better. But with speech analytics,
Yep.
I don't think in 5 years anyone should ever have to do another survey again as long as they live. Because
Exactly.
I mean, that's right. Well, just because if you're doing a survey, generally you're either bored or pissed. And I don't think it's a real, in my business, it's not always a real valid piece of it. But
Yep.
the analytics, whether it's non-voice or voice, is 100% of the time it's real time. And we've had great luck working with both customers to understand that, hey, everyone that buys says this,
Yeah.
so maybe that should be the lead in your marketing.
Yeah.
And everybody that doesn't buy is looking for this, so maybe you need to develop a product that does that. And then even on the agent side, you can tell if the agent hates their job before they quit. And so I think, and I think a lot has evolved in the last year, and I see it getting
Yeah.
better monthly. But so I think when you have to take every survey with a grain of salt, but people don't know they're doing it, and it's
Right.
behind the scenes all the time, real time. It's becoming much more, I believe, accurate, usable data, especially than Net Promoter Score, right?
All right, so you're talking about combining it with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, that's it. That's why I tell people, if you want it in a portfolio coupled with something else that's great. But would I make a big capital investment on it? I'd be really scared to do that, given a resource like you just shared or other resources, you know, and that. So, and that's an example of what I'll be sharing, which is a portfolio approach. That's two in a portfolio right there. You know, your method coupled to MPS. And so what I found through my own work in trying to either create a new customer experience or improve it or innovate it is that, and we all know this, people are very complicated. We're complicated, okay? And it isn't, you know, I've had some people be smart and say, well, we're just 90% water. And I'm like, okay, but we're complicated, you know, including whatever makes us up. So there's chemistry and then there's psychology and all that. And where I'm going with this is that I find that a lot of views of people and how they experience interactions are really not deep enough. And so I said there has to be a minimum group of categories that will allow us to better understand the human experience, particularly if it's a human experience interacting with something digital, okay? Because people aren't digital. And so I came up with this and realized that a lot of the customer experience leaders already have their own CX4, but this is my minimum for what you need to understand people go through in an interaction. The value of the interaction, not to be confused with the value of what they bought or the value of the service. It's, did they value that interaction? And then why did they value or not value that interaction? And then the range of emotions people experience during the interaction. Because people are emotional, even if it's a business thing. It's somebody's promotion is on the line or their reputation in their company is on the line. They're worried about making bad choice, good choice. Then the customer perception of how the interaction used their time. And I like to say, if I'm asking somebody this face to face, because I'm not a fan of surveys either. I mean, I like to actually see somebody when I'm trying to get some information as well as combine it. But I'll ask them, so when you called for customer service, was your time used not well or very well? Very balanced. You don't ever bias a question, and then I'll ask them to rate it. And then the other thing you always do if you're getting a rating is you always ask for why. Just having a bag of numbers isn't going to tell you about the human experience. So you rated that a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10? Tell me more about that, and then just listen, okay? And so there's two elements, and then I can combine that with a third or a fourth in a portfolio and get some real intelligence on that. Then here, it's what I call the do-fors. What did an interaction do for somebody? And rarely do I find that there's a middle. And when I was writing the first book, the publisher didn't let me put this in, but it's do to. You're either doing something for somebody or to somebody. It burned up my time. It made me mad. It didn't solve my problem. It made me feel good. And so I don't find there's much of a middle in do for or do to. You know, whether it's in research or actually building the customer experience or watching somebody, you're either helping somebody or you're hurting somebody, and then have them tell you why. And so I think that if we understand these four, and if you're in healthcare, you might add a fifth, and it could be how they feel, time to healing. It just depends on the case. But it does add more complexity. But this is the minimum you need to know about an interaction that involves a human being. Not to be mistaken for machine-to-machine interactions or people who develop digital stuff that work better with machines than humans. That's a whole different problem. So any questions on the CX4? Okay. But that customer time, that number 3, really important, especially for Gen Z. So the one thing you want to do, and the reason why you can't just use one way to understand this customer experience people are having, is you need different kinds of inputs into an intelligence portfolio to close what I call the say-do gap. So every methodology or every input has its strengths and weaknesses. And certainly NPS, that has strengths and weaknesses. Analytics has strengths and weaknesses. Surveys have strengths and weaknesses. And I like to use a combination of inputs so that it closes the say-do gap. If I interview a small group of customers, what they say during an interview about an interaction and what they do with that interaction might be two different things. So that means that really what I want to do is I want to observe the same customer type having the same interaction, as well as interview people of that customer type, and then I'm in a better position to come to a conclusion. So right away, I'm closing it. And we're human, so the best of us have maybe 80% where say-do is the same thing, because we're human. And so you want to close that. So that's one reason why you should have more than one input. And I love Joel's example of, well, NPS has its limits, we need another input. And so this is an example of an online buying experience of a group of customers that are the same. And so when we ask them to rate something about this interaction online, we got the CX4 and we've got 5, 8, 7, and 6, basically that way. But when we ask them, because if you ask somebody for a rating and you never ask them why, you're leaving it to somebody else to decide for the customer why they gave it that rating. And I like to know why somebody gave something a rating and then really make a better decision. So here we see the emotional range. They felt intrigued and excited, even though they gave it a mediocre 5, 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest rating. Value of the interaction, 8, great value, worth it for me. A time spent, not well spent, 7, quick, my time was well spent. Do 4, do 2, 6, it was helpful. Now it's interesting how I have to depend on the words more for decision making in this group, because 5 is really a non-answer. It's kind of in the middle. But this is why I was glad we had words. And then if we had observation, watching somebody use their device to make that purchase, we can add that in. And that would be a very, what I call a tight, kind of a really tight portfolio where you have complementary strengths and weaknesses from the different kinds of input. And now it's, okay, let's turn that, do a little analysis, turn that into insights and make a decision. Is this working for this customer type or not working? So there's just a little sample. So we want a group of carefully selected inputs from customers, users, and influencers as the basis for customer experience intelligence. And of course, the leaders who are already getting it right for Gen Z, they've known about this for a few years. Netflix more so than anybody else. They have tremendous analytics and original data. They buy in big data, but they also watch people anonymously, as well as, come to our office. And I use them as an example because they were so far ahead in that area for so many years. But then you've got other companies. And you don't have to be a big, giant company to pick these inputs that will work. You need to test them. And it takes a while to get the combination. And so here's an example. It's been anonymized, but in this portfolio example, this is in-person interviews, which I don't call it, but it is called thick data, and we'll talk about what thick data is in just a second. So that's here. About 10% of the incoming raw information is thick data. Then we've got ethnography, which is borrowed from sociology, where we're observing with purpose and in an ethical way. We're watching people in the natural environment of when they're having the interaction, and we're combining that with the interviews we know. Then we've got website analytics. Then we've got AI as an input. So I think about AI as it can be an input for intel, or it can actually help us sort through a whole bunch of the data from other inputs so that we can get insights, or it can actually be that I'm interacting with something that's been created with artificial intelligence. But no matter what, we have to, what does all that mean for a human? Now in this, we've got internet surveys. And so again, each one of these has strengths and weaknesses, but it fits together like a puzzle. And then ServiceNow does a lot of this in-app feedback. They'll send you out just 1 or 2 quick questions you can answer, being very precise about how is that function working for you. We know, we know you just use that function in our enterprise software, in our work production software. How is that working for you? Tell me why. So it's like fresh off the trail or while the person's using it. And people are more than happy to give that. So, and then they bring in big data, psychographics basically, so they want to know more about the lifestyle of the people in this company. So all this is balanced. Now this doesn't mean you need to have this many inputs about each interaction. This one happened to work out really well after it was tested. So it takes a little while to test them. Again, are they giving you insights? Are they prescriptive? Are they predictive? Is it working for you? Are you getting more advocacy, and are you making more money? That's kind of where this all fits. So, any comments or questions? Okay. And so thick data is really interesting. I've got a link in your workbooks there, and I know that's hard copy, but if you just search on Tricia Wang and the title of this, it's The Human Insights Missing from Big Data. Tricia Wang put in words in a 16-minute video what a whole bunch of people who work with customers really understand, but could not have articulated it like she did. She is an expert observer, and she's done work for Nokia before they went off the cliff, before they didn't listen to her. That's just my opinion. And then Netflix and a bunch of companies. So she's a professional at observing people and then combining that with other inputs to come up with some very effective decision-making information. That is a great video to watch. And what she says is thick data is data that comes from humans, like stories, emotions, and interactions that cannot be quantified. You can attach numbers to it, but it's really looking at the whole human. And what you want to make sure, if you care about customers and customer experiences, you don't strip the humanity out of the inputs you're getting, and then you make a non-human decision, and suddenly, maybe it'll work, maybe it doesn't, or maybe it's working for you, but it's not optimized for human beings. So let me know. If you do look at that, I'd love your opinion. But she coined that term, thick data, and that for years I kept saying, well, it's some kind of qualitative thing going on, but she explains it so much better. So there's different examples, and in page 70 in the book, I kind of gave 3 examples of thick data, because it's hard to get thick data because it takes more time and effort, and it's more complex because you're looking at the whole person, and then, wow, that's just thick, but in-person interviewing, ethnography, where there's nothing in between. If I want to know if Fred's happy with an interaction, I want to observe him. If Fred, call into this support number, and I want to watch you and listen to you do that, okay? I'll combine that with the metrics that come out of that, and maybe one other method, and maybe that turns out to be my little portfolio, and it can even be predictive, and so the list of non-thick is rather huge, because that's many kinds of data, but you really want that combination. And with thick data, you don't need an enormous sample compared to, let's say, big data, analytics, and other inputs. But if you anchor the thick data you have with all those others, the whole portfolio is much more effective. And what that means, it's much more prescriptive and predictive. It's much more right. And so, very interesting. And again, this is a list of companies. Pedigo, for instance, they have data about their sales. They've got online data, but they rely on, they're unique in e-bikes. They rely on the people who run those stores to get them thick data, okay? Because they're seeing the customer all the time, okay? And they have other thick data methods. So it's very interesting. So is anybody combining thick data with other kinds of data? Anybody doing that now?
Yeah, I do it naturally, though. It's not, I didn't have a word for it.
No, I didn't either until I saw
But
Tricia Wang.
when you do side by side with the agent, you're kind of observing the agent, but at the same time, you're observing, our customers too. And
Yeah.
kind of assigning words to what their feelings are and
I love it. Yeah, that's a great example. It's almost intuitive because we are thick data. You know, anybody else want it? Thank you. Anybody else want to share any? So after I learned that term, and it you know, I related to it as you, I was like, okay, and then I went and I looked at the companies and I thought, okay, and I said, okay, I looked at their inputs and I was like, thick, not thick, and I was like, oh my God, this is part of their success. They knew it. They might not have used that term, you know, but definitely I encourage you to see that video because it's a humorous video, but it's also a right video because there's other things in a portfolio that people can be addicted to numbers and forget about the people part and so forth. So,
Hey, Jeff?
yes.
Have they ever come up with a quantitative number, like 5% is where you want to target of interactions, 1%? I mean, what's the good target that you should be looking at if you want to really take a good look at big data and make it usable?
You know, that's a great question. You know, probably the proper answer is you have to test and experiment depending on how, like, okay, that wasn't effective. Are we not relating it to the other data good enough, or do we simply need a larger sample? And so once you get that dialed in, I'm going to guess, though, that it's somewhere between 10 and 20% of the input.
Okay.
And then it has to be related to the other inputs with human care. Now, if somebody has a way to automate that where it's effective, that's wonderful. Yeah, no, that's a good. That's right up there with like how many market segments are correct for my company and all this. It's like, well, you know, how many personas should I have? So yeah, it depends on the particular case. And to your point, you know, so let's say interviews don't scale. So that's going to cost you a fortune in time and money. So another question is, what's the minimum thick data I can keep in the portfolio for the effectiveness to really bring up the level of effectiveness? So yeah, and once you get that balance and you monitor it, and if things start going awry and things aren't as good, then you have to adjust. It's like anything else, things change, customers are fickle.
Jeff, I think you've got a couple of questions.
Oh, sure.
Bill and Shelley.
Oh yeah, okay.
Is sentimentality, when you hear that from the analytics, wouldn't that be a component of thick data, or could it be used as thick data? Because you're getting the tones and everything from the back and forth with the customer and with the provider.
I would say that it's thick data if you got it directly from the customer, but if it's an interpretation of data for sentimentality, with thick data you really have to be seeing the person. You need a visual on the person. So so that doesn't mean that if you have sentimentality data, that sentimentality shouldn't be included in the intelligence portfolio. But you really, with thick data, you really need the person to present it, you know, live. Like you could do that in an interview. You could do that in observing somebody. You could do that in a focus group. If, again, you need to see the person. If you're not seeing the person and that sentimentality data is, let's say, a subset of big data about somebody, or it's a subset of another data, it wouldn't be considered thick.
Yeah, so you have to see them and not just hear them.
Right. Yeah, and matter of fact, somebody wanted to do it over the phone, and I said, no, you've got to see them. And it kind of blew them away. Well, and then I had a student who had a...
I agree with you.
Oh, good. Thank you. 10, yep, good.
I kind of agree with Shelley. I mean, you can't always see somebody. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been doing a sales job where I don't see people the majority of the time, and you have to hear emotion, you know, through the phone call.
Sure.
And speech analytics, like Joel was saying, it has gotten pretty good now, where you can have two agents saying the exact same thing, doing the exact same, you know, filling the same solution for somebody, but the way that the agent is talking and how happy they are and how enthusiastic they are and how the client is picking it up, the sentiment analysis will pick that up. And I mean, I think that is huge, because if an agent calls in and they get their problem solved, but they just really, or the client calls in and they talks to the agent, they get the problem solved, but they just really don't like the agent because sounds like he just doesn't want to work there anymore, they're not going to want to call back. You know, maybe they are going to go to another service, or maybe they will just try a different channel of communication. But yeah, I would argue that sentiment analysis is very crucial in the thick data.
Well, you know, what I would do is I would take that as an input in a CX portfolio and then not have the thick data input and then compare it in a portfolio with the thick data input to see. So I'm understanding that. And then if the results showed that it was the same and there wasn't a difference in the outcome, then I'd say, oh, okay, you don't need the thick data in this because you've, and that is, to your point though, that's coming directly though, right?
It is, yeah.
You're just not
And
seeing
you're
them.
getting such a larger sample too,
Yeah.
because unfortunately with like, NPS scores and stuff, you're gonna get the people that just had the absolute best experience and give you a 10.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have the people that had the worst experience and give you a 1. You're not gonna get that middle range, but you are getting a sample of every interaction with
Got it. It scales. It scales. But that's part of the reason why you need a portfolio, because again, a weakness of interviewing and seeing somebody is it doesn't scale and it costs a lot of time and it's a big effort. But if it turns out that you can experiment and you can get a portfolio of intelligence that is absent from thick data where that acts as the substitute and you get the same results, then I'd be like, hey man, that's the next step.
Sure.
Because all of this is growing and moving and changing, you know, but but I would definitely want to run it up against one where there was some portion of interviews just to see. And to your point, then you'd be able to say, okay, well now I can whittle down the inputs and I've got scale and I've got accuracy. That would be the goal. Yeah, this is like the discussion on how do you make the best portfolio.
Yeah.
It's the good discussion.
And being on camera in the video now is so hard to grade too, because back to the Gen Z, they're very comfortable talking face to face and being on camera. So that person would be incredible at their job and fit the bill and then some, but then you talk to them on the phone and you see them and then you think that they're not capable. Unfortunately.
Right, that's it. Yeah, no, it has strengths and weaknesses and each method or input, and then it depends on what you're trying to do. But this is the good conversation. If we were to sit down and say, well, let's make a portfolio and optimize it, I would say, okay, let's try this and see, and if we can knock out the in-person interviews and get the same result, then it's awesome. So, no, good. Anybody else have a comment? Okay. So I put this in here because I think Spotify is one of the best in best practice of personalization, and particularly for Gen Z. Spotify uses AI, and what's interesting is they use collaborative filtering to get to, for the recommended songs and stuff, but they also use thick data and they use human editor inputs for their algorithms. So trying to avoid algorithm bias and all of this, and machine bias also. But I just found it interesting how they describe what they do. So this is a video from them, and again, if we had more time together, I'd love to watch it with you and get your input on, oh, okay, they've got their little portfolio going that's very successful. And I say little portfolio in a respectful way. They have whittled it down. They have whittled the combinations down where they're getting effectiveness, they're getting the predictability, and they're pleasing their customers with new recommendations and so forth. So again, I put this in here so that hopefully when you have extra time, you can watch this and get an idea. So as I mentioned, there's many choices for non-thick data, and then here's 3 that I know of that have worked very well for a lot of companies and worked very well for myself when I'm working with companies. So don't worry, I won't read this off to you. You have a copy of this. It's never meant to be in a slide. A few of these I'll show you are process slides, so they're perhaps not the most exciting, but the bottom line you should take away from this slide is that you need a process to convert a combination of inputs in a portfolio. You need a process to convert that through analysis and then to make the insights and then recommendations. And then of course you need actions, okay? And so these inputs in this case were, we had data, we had interviews, and a third one. And so again, you can adjust this. And this is a manual small scale that I use to teach companies and students. Okay, this is how you do this. We do this with a small sample size and small inputs. But once they swing through all this, thank you, they get an idea of what to do. But you need to then validate things, do an analysis, create insights. And you'd be surprised how many companies there are with tremendous potential of inputs, but they don't turn it into insights, or they let unqualified people, or they don't test what's automated. Is that really helping us be predictive, and so forth. So again, have a process. You can look at this one. If you have any questions later on, let me know, email me or call me, or whichever platform you'd like to use. You will get a template like this, and this is a way to organize it. It's called a findings template, but whatever your inputs are, you need a way to really organize those, either for human reading, for at a glance. This was one question, and we have numbers and we have words, and then there was observation, so that you can then start to write an analysis or have it automated in a logical way, and then maybe that's where you have humans decide, okay, we're going to be part of the insights, and so forth. And then you've got a template here. This is called the Customer Experience Journey Eval Template Tool. This is, don't worry about what's on here, but just understand that you really need to have a way to look at the interactions from the time somebody discovers your company to when they would consider it, and in this case, visit the shop, and then advocacy. So we've got names for interactions, and typically, what is the customer trying to do? Then we've got on internet and off internet, and what we've got there is what the customer is trying to do and what the customer is interacting with. Because as we go further down, and again, you will have a blank of this, we got the CX4 in there, and in this case, we've modified it for the methods we're using, but we've asked them to rate interactions on these scales and then give us a quote, and so we put that in here. And then as we go down, it's the evaluator's estimate of, and remember, you're going to be getting copies of this in Excel, so you'll have this, but it's the evaluator's estimate of would that interaction cause advocacy, cause a recommendation, and why. And then we go further down, are you recommending to fix, improve, or innovate that interaction? And then these are the descriptions of why and how. So that's the main thing to take away is, if you have a different way to do it, that's fine. And then for some companies, this will be a manual Excel effort. Other companies, it will be automated, and then they look at what comes out. Any questions or comments? Is anybody doing this now, as far as you've really got this mapped out, and you can quickly get over? You're doing it now?
It's Six Sigma.
Okay.
Back, I was just saying, it's very Six Sigma to me about doing a measurement analysis phase and everything, you get your input, you
Yep.
go through and test your measurements and analyze, and then it tells you what your output should be.
Got it. And do they use?
I like this, it's much more easier for the layman to understand.
Yeah, I use it for teaching, but this comes from people like Apple and Intuit. They use this, and this is why I don't like journey maps. That I'm going to be a few minutes late on this session, so bear with me. But I don't like when people have journey maps and there's no good information behind it, and that. So anyway, you'll have this, and let me know if you use this. I would love to hear from you, because I mean, we just want to make a difference here. So almost lastly here, what we've got is there's kind of three different phases of intelligent portfolio development going on. So I would say here, in all of these, you need some analysis to come out of the portfolio, and then an analysis really tells the story of what interactions are working and not working for certain types of customers, and why. Why is always important, okay? Then you have insights from that analysis, and then you have the recommendations and the actions to be taken. Well, so the most advanced here are using automation to a degree to make it quicker, making time to insights and recommendations quicker. And then you've got some companies where it's partially automated and partially manual. Wow, I guess that spot doesn't like me. That's it, thanks. So we've got sort of, I wouldn't say half and half, but it's a hybrid of automation and human involvement in this. And then the very first one is it's a manual effort, and this is really good just starting out to teach people, and then you can make a better decision on what to automate. But eventually I look at AI, for instance, as being in a position to take over at a minimum a lot of the sorting, okay? And to some degree you can get it to pop some insights. But my experience has been I would love as a human to offload all of the sorting. And what does the numbers mean? What does the text mean? And then let's get our best minds in the room and figure out, you know, what are the insights for that interaction and what do we need to do. Important metric, time to insights, very important for next generation customers and business competitive. Time to insights for Gen Z is going to be extra important because of the patience factor. The quicker you can change or, you know, improve or innovate a interaction for them, the happier they'll be, the happier your company will be. So I'll quickly look at this. And what this is I'll just show you an actual one. So this is from a tool company, a famous tool company actually. And this is real information, it's been anonymized, but the main takeaway is not that. The main takeaway is that it was really easy to see, looking at the numbers and looking at the words that came from the selected words, that interaction number 3, gathering information, finding the website and then gathering information in it to make a tool purchase decision, was really not working for most customer types. And so that needed the most attention. So that gives you an idea of, well, the hard work pays off in being able to look at the whole, from discovery to advocacy, what's working, what isn't working, and for what customer type. And then, let's see here. And then again, it just goes down the categories that I told you as far as likelihood to make a recommendation and so forth. So I just wanted to quickly show you that because it's been used for real a lot, and it works out well.
Is it used by companies like Invoca?
You know, I'm not sure about those companies. I can tell you that Apple has used it, Intuit has used it. You know, I can't tell you all that I know because they would get angry, but I can tell you that it's very well proven. And then the other thing is I've got over 200 companies that have been evaluated by my business students at UC San Diego to great success to improve their customer experience. So it's, and myself, of course. But anyway, that gives you an idea. And so hang on, I think what we'll do now is move over to best practices. But anybody got any last questions before we get into the best practices part? Comments? Was any of that new to anybody? Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, all right. So in the last 15 minutes, we'll talk about best practices. And so I hope you've been accumulating some best practices along the way as we've been talking, and hopefully you've got some ideas. But great, thank you. And best practices are very important. And for me, when I've helped little companies, it's like, why don't we do the big best practices that the most successful companies, and remember, a lot of the most successful customer experience companies started out as startups. There's a couple that have changed, like Ally Bank. I mean, they were GMAC, and then they changed, and then they realized, okay, we got to be a really good online bank, and they did a very good job. So, but most of them started out as startups. So why not look at how they started and what they did, what their habits were, and what their processes were that really made them great experience makers. And so what I've done is there's many best practices. I've listed quite a few in the book, but there's many more. I mean, that would be a whole book in itself. But I've picked out a few to share with you because I think that they would help in particular any interaction, particularly with Gen Z, and also particularly for fine-tuning a raw AI input as an interaction, okay? So this one is, it's actually one of my favorites and most useful is, these are 3 important different customer types. So this is knowing which businesses, from a customer experience standpoint, which businesses influence your customer and set those customer expectations for experience. Because if you aren't a customer experience leader, it's really doubtful that you're setting expectations for your own company, unless you've got a long relationship. So what we've got across the top here is messages, people, processes, products, and services. And we found out that 3 important customer types for one business, like the messages at Schwann's, let's say in Persona 1, Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor, they like the purchasing process of Amazon, the Apple iPhone, they love using it and demonstrating it to their friends, and they love the concierge service they get at Nordstrom's. Now once you know that, if that's a customer you want or have, it's almost like cheating, because now I know what they like, and I can modify or create a customer experience online or offline for them. So we've got the 2 other important customers, and of course you have to know why. It isn't that, oh, I like Nordstrom's. I want to know their specifics. So to me, this is where it gets fun. And I also like to know the reverse. What are your, I love to know like what your worst 3 customer experiences and why offline and online, so I don't do that with you. All right, and there's a lot of emotion there. So again, it's knowing which businesses set your customers' expectations. Understand customer experience time, and we've bumped into this, so I won't go into it, but you really need to understand Gen Z, they're working in a compressed, they've learned about time differently than other prior generations. So getting input about how you use their time and how you could use their time better, very valuable. What is concierge service or concierge level service in my industry? This is really interesting because it's a higher level of service than most people can imagine, and yet a lot of companies are doing it, okay? And so when I was working with a coffee distributor in San Diego called Coffee Ambassador, who was later bought by another company, and then they run this Coffee Ambassador program, but they installed the vending machines to hospitals and biotech firms and architectural firms, and these are brewing machines, and you know, with the water inlet and the filter coming in, and it's really great stuff. And we interviewed the COO of a hospital, big client. She loves Nordstrom's. And we were like, okay, what do you like about it? And then we went to Nordstrom's and watched how Nordstrom's interacts with their customers. And we said, okay, how can we bring up our, they're already having good customer service. But what we did was we got ideas like, well, if one of the machines breaks down, let's have 2 of these machines here ready to go. And this was for Scripps, by the way, an enormous healthcare system. And the doctors and the nurses in the surgeries, they like to come out and have coffee, okay, or even before, and patients and so forth. So lo and behold, the owner argued against it. He says, it's just going to be sitting there. It's not going to be making us any money while it's sitting there. All that money is tied up. 3 months go by, coffee machine breaks down, and I told their service people, instead of telling them they have to call the hardware maker, right, the brewer maker, I said, bring this out to them, install it, show them how to use it if it's different, and then we deal with it because we have more leverage than the distributor. And that happened, and within a half an hour, that's concierge services. We are taking care of you. Don't you worry about that. And within a half an hour, they had coffee flowing again. And there was another 4 or 5 months that went by, and then eventually the COO referred a very significant customer to Coffee Ambassador. And the salespeople couldn't believe, they said to me, this stuff works. And I said, yeah, I don't make this stuff up, okay? I'm teaching it to you, but I mean, it really works. So they went one up. It wasn't just how can we serve you, okay? And when I went out to interview the people who were running the hospital in the COO's office, they thought I was going to ask them about questions about how Coffee Ambassador was doing, and they were surprised when I wanted to know what their favorite and least favorite experiences were and why. Because I wanted to really invent, which we did, the concierge level service of a business to business, business to healthcare provider, coffee supplier. So you get to define what concierge service is. To me, it's a huge opportunity. Then blend the internet and off-internet customer experience. Great, thanks. We've got Gen Z now, which is way more important to blend this because we've got a generation that can use 2, 3, 4 interactions at once. That's amazing to me, okay? It's not amazing if you were born into the technology and you naturally do that, okay? So the way to do that is there's different ways of testing. Well, does my website make sense when somebody's talking to somebody or when somebody's on a chatbot? Is the mobile app making sense? We've got to now test using 2, 3, 4 at once to make sure that there's continuity between the interactions. If there's confusion, you will lose the Gen Z customer or there'll be tremendous frustration. A lot of importance in that one. I weight that very heavily as a best practice. So a guy named Steve Krug, who was a very successful website designer and mobile app designer, wrote a book, and when he went to finally title it, he said that the biggest thing that he learned over the years was that with your website design or any digital interaction is you don't want to make people think. And that doesn't mean that people are foolish. It means they've got things on their mind. And you want to talk about level of effort that was mentioned earlier. You really don't want them to have a high level of effort, which means that you have to understand them and understand a lot of the environment that they're using, whether it's a mobile app or a chatbot, whatever it is. You really want that tested and sorted for them because as people who understand behavior, they call it high cognitive load. You want a low cognitive load. Doctors using it in the doctor's office, that interface design is going to be different for somebody who's using it in a quiet office where they have time. Okay, and so don't make me think. And then lastly, plan to develop and deliver positive emotion for each interaction. I can tell you that Intuit does this in particular. They do it well. I cite them as somebody. They actually plan and test for emotional outcomes and so forth because this is really very important because it not only impacts whether somebody will even stay with you, but it impacts advocacy. So you really want, well, do I want them to feel happy? Do I want to feel them satisfied? Because you don't want to guess at what the emotional outcome could be of an interaction. And even if you get it right really well, sometimes it's unpredictable. So you could get surprised negatively even if you fine-tuned it. But if you don't make an attempt at creating and having positive emotion targets for your customers, which could be different by customer type, you could be risking a lot. So anyway, I guess, do I have time for one quick story? Is there? Okay, all right. Well, all right. So this is a quick story. So this combines emotional results with blending interactions. And so I was speaking at a product management conference up in Orange County in California, and about halfway through the presentation, because we talked about customer experience and product development and testing and all, and this lady in the audience pops up and she says, well, I had a really bad experience at Best Buy. And I was like, all right. Because I was just starting to talk about Best Buy because they were having struggles many, many years ago, and we were wondering, because Best Buy thought the store was more important than the customer, but that's a whole other thing. So she says, oh, I went online and I found the product I wanted and I got excited and I went to order it, but I couldn't order it online. It said I had to go to the store. So she goes to the store and they have no idea what she's talking about, but they think that they can get one like it in the back. So they bring her this, and it's twice as expensive as she wants. It's overkill for what she wants, and she is just, and she's standing up, and I'm like scared. I mean, I don't run fast, and I'm like, oh my God, she's really pissed. And I said, look, I understand that. I said, if you want to talk about that at the end here, let me know. I got about 15 more minutes to go. And I said, by the way, before you sit down, could you please tell me, so this happened to you on the way over tonight? She said, no, that happened to me 5 years ago. I was like, 5 years ago, and it still sticks in your mind like that. I have no idea how many customers she's turned away from Best Buy. But so there was a combination of high emotion and frustration that the interactions online and in person didn't match for her. And you know, but I still, she was she had that passion. You know, it's like, oh my God, they wronged me 5 years ago. So thank you. I hope that you got some value from this and you'll be able to use this. And if you have any questions later on or something I said didn't make sense, just let me know, okay? So thank you.
Anti-advocate?
Absolutely.
Anti-advocate.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Wanna do that?
That's a whole other, yeah, and sometimes people are more willing to be anti-advocates than advocates, so there's ratios for that too. Yeah, that's behavioral economics, man. Yeah, that's scary. Thank you.
All right, lunchtime, and enjoy the lunch. It's, I guess, coming, on its way, or maybe it's outside. We'll eat in here. There's tables outside if you want to get some fresh air, assuming there's fresh air out there today. And Jeff will be up here in about 15 minutes. If you want to have him sign a copy of the new book, he'll be here. He'll also be up here a little later on, but there you go. Enjoy.
Thank you.
I had a great day today in Jeffrey's workshop, and the biggest takeaway that I have is to make sure that I remain curious when it comes to Gen Z. I definitely recommend attending the conference.
Hi, I'm Jeff DeVries. I'm with Content Guru. Got to participate in this workshop today with Jeff Bean and Cloud Tech Gurus. I learned a new way to measure customer experience, kind of think outside the box in terms of the way we have been measuring and look at new ways with customer experience intelligence. Thought it was really an interesting topic. I really liked the event, I liked the format, and I highly recommend anybody who's interested in customer experience and modern customer experience to attend in the future.
I thought the session was just really good at doing a deep dive into the differences between Generation Z versus the millennials. I think it's important as CX leaders that we consider who our customers are and what we need to do to meet their needs. And I really appreciated all the research and expertise that was provided that I can take back to my organization and really think about how we craft our processes, the technology we use to make sure we're meeting our customers where they're at.
Hey everyone, Bill Fisher here. Just attended a CX workshop in Phoenix, Arizona, held by Cloud Gurus. We went over Gen Z and how Gen Z is the future of your business. If you don't know what makes Gen Z buy or not buy right now, you need to get out here soon. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Joel Sylvester with 5-Star Call Centers. Just had a great day with the Cloud Tech Gurus. Jeffrey Bean gave a great presentation talking about data and customer service journey, really focusing on Gen Z's way to really look at thick data and the way to incorporate into your organization. So it was excellent. Always great to hang out with customer service professionals, share best practices, talk about what's working, what's not working. So great event.